Welcome back to Flying with Brian. It's time to get back to work on this right wing on the Rans S-21. My wife and I have been on vacation for a couple weeks, so I actually haven't had a chance to work on it in about 3 weeks now. You can see we've got it flipped over upside down now, so I can install the lower skin, and I'll show you some of the things you couldn't see when it was flipped over right side up. All right, Rans provides you with a set of these blocks. There's a piece for the leading edge and the trailing edge, and then you provide your own wood to go ahead and make a fixture for the tip and the root of the wing so that I can mount the wing upside down and still work on it on my table. So I built those. We got the wing flipped over. I'll show you some of the stuff that you couldn't see before. These are the flap attachment brackets. There's 4 of those. They have been riveted to the appropriate ribs, and the bushings installed for the hinges. And then also you install the belt crank mechanism and the hardware for that. It actually actuates the flap, and that's where this red cable goes. You can see coming out of the end of the wing. Inside this black wire loom here is all the wiring for the lights and also the outside air temperature probe. And then there's another set of hinge arms for the ailerons. And you can see also the bracketry for the aileron belt crank. And that just operates on the cable. And here's a better look at that. The wing truss assembly. Again, that's a big steel tubing structure. That's where the strut attaches to the wing. And then down here, I've got cut out a hole in the leading edge for the landing light. And then I've got a connector here, the landing light. I haven't done a connector yet for the wingtip lights, but that will come eventually. I also made these little L brackets with some grommets in them to just secure the wire. Same thing on that outside air temperature probe. You can see some of the brackets there for that. I think Rans just has you dangle the wire in some safety wire from the rib. I've decided to go with a little more permanent fixture there. I'll show you what I'm doing on the outside air temperature probe. All right, so this is the outside air temperature probe. I'm going to mount it on this, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 5th rib, and it's going to come out of that bottom skin. I've made a template for a bracket that I'm going to cut out of some 40 thousandths. So that's what I'm going to work on today is making that bracket. All right, I've got my OAT bracket made. Took some 40 thousandths, used that template to cut it out, and then put it in the brake and drilled a hole pattern to pick up the rib here. Got to clamp it to the rib and then drill my holes in the rib and make sure I get the top where it'll be nice and flush so that the skin won't have any kind of indentation or unevenness to it. All right, I've got the outside air temperature bracket clamped in place. I need to transfer drill those holes through the bracket into the rib, then deburr that and rivet the bracket to the rib. And then once I've got these holes marked on the top, I used piece of 20 thousandths that I used when I made the pitot tube bracket, and I used this to transfer holes. So what's going on here is I have picked up the holes along the rib. I don't know if you can tell, but with this piece. Then I've also got, you see I have some tape over the old holes that were used when I did the pitot tube. So I just didn't want to confuse those holes. But I've got 3 holes here that I'm going to transfer into this bracket. So when this goes on, it mounts. It'll be this hole for rivets, and then this is the hole that the actual probe is going to go through. I'm going to start with 40 thousandths on those 3 holes, and then once I have the skin in place on top of it, then we'll open those holes up to larger holes. Number 30s for the 1/8 rivets, and then this hole will get big enough to take the OAT probe in it. But what will happen is the skin will lay on top of this, which is I'm not gonna be able to see those holes anymore, but this will then cleco into the rivet holes that are already in the skin and in the rib, and I'll be able to transfer these holes into the skin when the time comes. All right, so now I've got my holes drilled through the bracket into the rib. Everything's deburred. We're going to cleco this back together and then rivet it in there for final assembly. Then once the skin has been installed over it, I'll use my transfer piece to take the holes in the location I want into the bracket through the skin. Making sure that it's still nice and flush with the top of the rib. All right, now that bracket is installed, I've also placed these stringers into position. They don't actually attach to the ribs, they just get riveted to the skin, and they just give the skin some stiffness. I do have to make a cut in this one, the rear stringer, to clear the truss structure, and that's called for in the manual. So that cut has been made, and any scratches from the cut have been all sanded and smoothed out. So we're basically ready to lay the the bottom skin on the wing now. And we'll prep that skin, we'll deburr it and all that stuff, and press on. This is at the root of the wing. This is the stiffeners that I was talking about that go inside that skin for the top, and there's also a set that goes in the bottom skin. And then this is a rubber scupper that seals the tank to the wing, and I've pro-sealed that to the aluminum, the top skin there. All right, here's where we're at today. You can see I've taken my orbital sander with some 220, and I've gone down all the rivet lines. And that's just for mechanical adhesion of the paint later down the road when I'm painting, because it's hard to get to sand around each rivet. So it's much easier to just run the sander over the rows of rivet initially, and that just helps the paint adhere. I've also deburred all the edges and gone around the corners and making sure that they're not sharp. Taking my 220 sandpaper and some Scotch-Brite along all the edges and make sure there's no burrs or anything. I've installed or clecoed all these inspection rings in position. And I have riveted in the two stringers that go across the bottom. You can see those are just, they're not attached to the wing structure, they only attach to the skin, and they're just stiffen the skin. So the next thing to do is start putting clecos in. I'll use like an awl and maybe a couple awls to straighten the ribs gradually and put the clecos in and get this sheet attached to the ribs and get things lined up. All right, you can see I've got the clecos started, and I've got my transfer piece on here. I'm going to transfer these 3 holes into my bracket for the OAT probe. This is just a number 40 drill to start with. right, now I'm going to take the clecos off this piece. I'm going to open these up to a number 30 now. All right, so that's got my bracket attached to the skin. I'm going to open this hole up with a unibit to make it large enough to accept the actual diameter of the probe itself. All right, here's a probe, and it looks like to clear the threads, I need a 5/16 hole. Here's my unibit. You can see I've marked it for the 5/16. So we'll go down to that notch on the unibit. All right, that's what we need. All right, so I'll uncleco that and deburr it when it comes time to go ahead and bend this leading edge and deburr some of the other stuff. For now, I'm going to continue clecoing, just one row at a time, working my way towards the trailing edge along the ribs. And then I'm also going to come in and remove this root rib so that I can put the supports for the tank skin in there and cleco those in position. All right, now I'm going to take this root rib out so I can put the stickers in there. The holes are large. Can't get your cleco in a couple spots back here. To show you one extra thing about the stiffeners that I did, and I got this idea from DJ V on the Outbound 300 channel, and he noticed that the plans just have the stiffener riveting directly to the skin, but what happens is it has to sit on the flange of this rib, and then when you pull those rivets, you can have a little unevenness in the skin. So what I've done here is I've made some little strips that'll act like a spacer. And these are just 20,000ths like the stiffeners themselves. And they'll go on, well, you can see here they go. They get sandwiched between the skin and the stiffener. And again, that's an extra step. That's not in the plans. That may be overkill, but I just want it to look good. All right, so my technique here is I do a cleco on each of the spacers. And you can see I got this labeled tip and forward and aft. It does make a difference. These holes are spaced so that this stiffener will only go in there in one orientation. But I'm going to use the clecos to kind of find the hole and then hold it in position, and you come in with more clecos from the top. All right, this is the tip. That's the wing tip. We're going in this way. All right, I don't know if you can see, but my clecos are just coming up and touching those holes. So I've got it in the right spot. Now I need to hold it in position and come in with a cleco from the top. All right, so that one's in position. I'll do more clecos and pick up this rib and work my way. There's 4 of these stiffeners that go on. Oh, and I didn't mention, once I've got a couple of clecos in here holding the stiffener in position, then I would come in from the bottom and pull those first clecos out. So now the stiffeners are clecoed in position. I went in and made sure that my clecos are capturing the stiffener and the spacer there everywhere, and it's laying down flat. And you can see how the spacer kind of makes up for that gap between the flange of the rib and the stiffener itself. So now I've got to put the rib back in position. A little trick for that is to use a piece of like nylon cord and put that in here to sandwich underneath that, so it widens the gap a little bit. Then I'll slide the rib in position and then pull the cord out. So now you can see how I've got the cord in position. I feed the cord out of that hole in the rib. Once the rib is in position, we'll pull the string in. All right, pulling the strings out. Already got it in there. I just had to take a couple of my awls there and kind of, work them back and forth to get the cleco in. So now I come back and I look at all these hinge arms to make sure that the cutouts in the skin are clearing them. And if not, then we'll pull the skin up, take the clecos out, pull the skin up, and do a little sanding, adjusting, filing. But actually, on this one, we've got clearance everywhere. First swing had to do a little bit of filing, but I think we're going to be all right. So the next thing is going to be to undo a few clecos on the leading edge and put that little roll, the little downward roll with my special tool on the leading edge. That should make that lay down in that groove a little better. All right, I got my tool. I got the clecos pulled back so that I can lift this up enough to run the tool down the edge. I had to remove those inspection rings. I forgot about doing this first. I've had a little bit of oil inside the tool to help it slide a little better. I think that should probably still be enough to do that. Let's see. All right, here we go. And you can see that puts just enough of a little bend to it to lay down on that track. And here you can see where the OAT probe will go. Those holes are transferred through the skin and then they go right into our bracket, right where we wanted them. So that turned out good. All right, the skin is cleat-coated all the way to the last rivet in the ribs. And now it's time to match drill these holes. I'm going to do number 40 first into the leading edge. All right, so we've got this bottom sheet fully cleat-coated in position. It's laying down nicely in the groove in the leading edge. It's time to start the match drilling process. And we'll do that just like I did on the top skin. And again, explaining that once again, these will be 1/8 flush rivets. So normally a 1/8 rivet gets a number 30 hole drilled, but these are number 40 holes, which is closer to 3/32. So I've got a special tool from Cleveland Aircraft Tool that has a number 40 pilot, and it's a dimpled die for a 1/8 rivet with a number 40 pilot. So once we drill these holes, we'll uncleco, we'll pull this skin back, and I'll get the dimple out, and I'll dimple all the way down using that tool, and then I'll come back again with a number 40 pilot and a 120-degree countersink, and then we're going to countersink this leading edge for all those dimples. And then we'll cleco it all back together. I'll drill those number 40 holes out to a number 30 hole, and that'll fit that 1/8 rivet really well. And then we'll uncleco, deburr, and then start riveting all the way back. So step one in the process is to match drill these holes with a number 40. So here we go. See this process here. I'm starting in the middle and working my way out, and I'm holding down with my fingers the skin so it's nice and flush and flat, and we'll just keep doing that so that it works out any kind of pillowing or unevenness in that skin. All right, we finished match drilling. You can see how this skin just lays down nice in that groove in the leading edge. Laid down nice and flat, no big pillows or anything like that. So now we get to pull out all these clecos, and I'm going to go probably 3 or 4 back, and then with the clecos and the ribs, and then we'll start the dimpling and countersinking. All right, so taking the clecos out, we'll prop the skin up here with a block of wood. Got my special dimple die set that I talked about. We'll start dimpling these holes in the skin. All right, now that the dimpling's done, it's time for the countersinking. Again, I use this tool to fit in the groove of the leading edge to give me a nice flat platform for this micro stop to rest on so I get a straight hole. And then I'm going to check the depth with my little depth gauge. All right, make our way down. Got the holes countersunk. I'm going to take my 2x4 out. And we'll cleco it back together. Drill those number 40 holes out to number 30, the reamer. Now I've clecoed the ribs back down. I went every other hole just to save some time. And obviously I went every other hole on the leading edge as well. So I'm gonna get my number 30 reamer, ream these number 40 holes out to number 30, then cleco those with the 1/8 clecos, the copper ones there. Pull all these silver clecos, drill those holes out to number 30, then uncleco everything and deburr it all, put it back together, and we'll be in business to start riveting. All right, our holes are opened up to number 30 now. It's time to uncleco from the leading edge, and again, probably just a couple of rivets back so we can peel up. I'll get underneath here, probably just Scotch-Brite on the skin will be fine, but I gotta get up inside the wing where the burrs are. And I think last time I used like a broom handle with some sandpaper wrapped around it. But like I said, uncleco, deburr, then reclico, and then start riveting. Well, I was trying to remember how I deburred inside the spar. At first I thought I had a stick with some sandpaper on it, but I don't think that's what I did. I have a tool called an in and out deburring tool. See this little piece that's, let's see, double edged there? It also is kind of spring loaded. So you push that into the hole, and then with the drill turning, I'll pull up just slightly, a couple rotations, and the back side of that little blade there will deburr the hole. So I'm going to put this in the drill, do that in all the holes. Well, I'm about ready to rivet this leading edge now. I got those holes deburred, and I vacuumed out all the shavings and trash inside the wing. Got it re-clecoed down. That's a lot of clecoing and drilling today. I think we're going to call it a day and come back tomorrow and start with the rivets. All right, new day. Got this bottom skin clecoed back on. I've checked the wing to make sure it's nice and square. We're going to start putting the rivets in, these flush rivets along the leading edge. What I'd like to do is start in the middle and then work my way out kind of equally. And then once I have this leading edge done, we'll work sequentially by the row of rivets, working towards the trailing edge. And as we do that, I'll make sure and hold the skin down between each rivet. And if there's any kind of creep or pillowing or anything like that, we're going to work it towards the trailing edge. Shouldn't be too much, but that's kind of the standard technique. So we'll get started with that. Got that leading edge on there, pretty smooth transition. Gonna take a break and then we'll start riveting our way back. All right, start with the first row of rivets on the ribs. Well, it looks like I lost a video or two, but at this point I have finished riveting to about 4 rows back from the trailing edge. And what I've done is I've taken a number 40 drill bit and I've match drilled the holes that are in the skin into the trailing edge or rear spar. And now at this point I'm coming in through with a number 30 reamer and opening those number 40 holes up to a number 30. So now that the rear spar is drilled, I'm going to take all the clecos off. Lift the skin up slightly and deburr that spar. So here's a look at how I'm deburring this. I've already started at the far end and gotten to this bay here, so I've got just 3 more bays to do. It's just 220. Come across the top. I'm try to swirl it a little instead of making straight scratches. But So that's the skin, the top of the spar. Now, the biggest burrs are here behind this lip on the trailing edge spar, where the drill bit poked through. Good. So once I've done that, I get my scotch brite. I'm just going to smooth those scratches out. So all right, now we got the 2 bays left. You don't need to watch me do that process. If this was 2024 aluminum and I was sanding it like that, I would come right back and prime it, because it tends to corrode a lot more. You'd be scratching the out flat off the top. But this 6061 is not made that way, so it's not as big of a corrosion concern. But I got this match drilled and deburred now. What I'm going to do next is I'm just going to prop it up, get my shock back out, come in here and vacuum up some of the aluminum shavings from drilling the holes. Once I got that clean, come back in with my clecos on each rib, and then across the trailing edge, and then we'll start our riveting. As you can see, I've got it re-clecoed, and we're starting with this first row of rivets. Well, that wraps it up for putting the bottom skin on this right wing. All the riveting is complete. Really no major headaches. It went pretty smoothly. The next thing we're going to tackle is putting the fuel tank in, but that's going to be in the next video. So thanks for stopping by as we're building this Rans S-21, and we'll see you on the next Flying with Brian.